It is a pleasure to have you with us at the English Story Journal. Grab a coffee, find a quiet spot, and let's get lost in the story. Mary took the picture back to the house when she went to her supper. She showed it to Martha. "Eh," said Martha with great pride, "I never knew our Dickon was as clever as that. That there's a picture of a missel thrush on a nest, as large as life and twice as natural." Mary understood Dickon's message. He would keep her secret. Her garden was like a nest, and she was like a bird. She liked the boy very much. She hoped he would come back the very next day. She fell asleep looking forward to the morning. But in Yorkshire, the weather changes fast. That night, Mary woke up. Heavy rain and wind hit her window. Mary sat up in bed. She felt sad and angry. "The rain is as contrary as I ever was," she said. "It came because it knew I did not want it." She lay back down. She hated the sound of the rain and the wind. She could not sleep. The sad sound kept her awake. "It sounds just like a person lost on the moor and wandering on and on crying," she said. Mary lay awake. Then suddenly she sat up. She listened. "It isn't the wind now," she said in a loud whisper. "That isn't the wind. It is different. It is that crying I heard before." Her door was open a little. The sound came from far away down the hallway. It was a soft, sad crying. She felt she must find out what it was. She put her feet on the floor. "I am going to find out what it is," she said. "Everybody is in bed, and I don't care about Mrs. Medlock. I don't care." She took a candle from her bedside and left her room quietly. The hallway was long and dark. Mary walked with her small light. The crying led her. She found the tapestry door. She opened the door softly and closed it. She heard the crying clearly now, but it was not loud. It came from another door nearby. A little light shone under that door. Someone young was crying in that room. So she walked to the door and pushed it open, and there she was standing in the room. It was a big room. On the bed lay a boy crying softly. Mary wondered if she was in a real place or if she was dreaming. The boy had a thin, pale face. His eyes looked too big. He looked sick, but he was crying like he was tired and annoyed, not in pain. Mary stood by the door with her candle. She walked quietly. The boy saw her light. He stared. His eyes opened very wide. "Who are you?" he asked in a half-frightened whisper. "Are you a ghost?" "No, I am not," I answered, her own whisper sounding half-frightened. "Are you one?" He stared and stared. Mary saw his strange gray eyes. "No," he replied, after waiting a moment or so. "I am Colin." "Who is Colin?" she faltered. "I am Colin Craven. Who are you?" "I am Mary Lennox. Mr. Craven is my uncle." "He is my father." "Your father?" gasped Mary. "No one ever told me he had a boy. Why didn't they?" "Come here," he said, still looking at her carefully. She came close to the bed, and he touched her hand. "You are real, aren't you? I have such real dreams very often. You might be one of them." Mary had put on a warm robe. She put it in his hand. "Rub that and see how thick and warm it is," she said. "I will pinch you a little if you like to show you how real I am. For a minute I thought you might be a dream too." "Where did you come from?" he asked. "From my own room. The wind withered so I couldn't go to sleep, and I heard someone crying and wanted to find out who it was. What were you crying for?" "Because I couldn't go to sleep either, and my head ached. Tell me your name again." "Mary Lennox. Did no one ever tell you I had come to live here?" He still felt her robe. He started to believe she was real. "No," he answered. "They daren't." "Why?" asked Mary. "Because I should have been afraid you would see me. I won't let people see me and talk me over." "Why?" Mary asked, confused. "Because I am like this always, ill and having to lie down. My father won't let people talk me over either. The servants are not allowed to speak about me. If I live, I may be a hunchback, but I shan't live. My father hates to think I may be like him." "Oh, what a queer house this is," Mary said. "What a queer house. Everything is a kind of secret. Rooms are locked up and gardens are locked up. And you, have you been locked up?" "No, I stay in this room because I don't want to be moved out of it. It tires me too much." "Does your father come and see you?" Mary asked. "Sometimes. Generally when I am asleep. He doesn't want to see me." "Why?" Mary could not help asking again. An angry shadow passed over the boy's face. "My mother died when I was born, and it makes him wretched to look at me. He thinks I don't know, but I've heard people talking. He almost hates me." "He hates the garden because she died," said Mary, half speaking to herself. "What garden?" the boy asked. "Oh, just a garden she used to like," Mary stammered. "Have you been here always?" "Nearly always. Sometimes I have been taken to places at the seaside, but I won't stay because people stare at me. I used to wear an iron thing to keep my back straight, but a grand doctor came from London to see me and said it was stupid. He told them to take it off and keep me out in the fresh air. I hate fresh air, and I don't want to go out." "I didn't when first I came here," said Mary. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" "Because of the dreams that are so real," he answered rather fretfully. "Sometimes when I open my eyes, I don't believe I'm awake." "We're both awake," said Mary. She looked around the big room. "It looks quite like a dream, and it's the middle of the night, and everybody in the house is asleep, everybody but us. We are wide awake." "I don't want it to be a dream," the boy said restlessly. Mary thought of something all at once. "If you don't like people to see you," she began, "do you want me to go away?" He still held her robe. He pulled it a little. "No, I should be sure you were a dream if you went. If you are real, sit down on that big footstool and talk. I want to hear about you." Mary put her candle down and sat on the stool. She wanted to stay in the secret room and talk to the boy. "What do you want me to tell you?" she said. He asked many questions. How long she was at Misselthwaite, about her room, what she did, if she liked the moor, where she lived before. Mary answered them all. He asked about India and her journey. Mary learned he had not learned like other children. A nurse taught him to read, and he always read books. His father rarely saw him. Colin had many toys, but was never happy. He got anything he asked for. "Everyone is obliged to do what pleases me," he said indifferently. "It makes me ill to be angry. No one believes I shall live to grow up." He said it as if it was normal. He liked Mary's voice. He listened. Then he asked a new question. "How old are you?" he asked. "I am 10, answered Mary, forgetting herself for the moment. "And so are you." "How do you know that?" he demanded in a surprised voice. "Because when you were born, the garden door was locked and the key was buried, and it has been locked for 10 years. Colin half sat up, turning toward her, leaning on his elbows. "What garden door was locked? Who did it? Where was the key buried?" he exclaimed, as if he were suddenly very much interested. It was the garden Mr. Craven hates, said Mary nervously. He locked the door. No one knew where he buried the key. What sort of a garden is it? Colin persisted eagerly. No one has been allowed to go into it for 10 years, was Mary's careful answer. But it was too late. Colin was like Mary. The secret garden made him excited. He asked many questions. They won't talk about it, said Mary. I think they have been told not to answer questions. I would make them, said Colin. Could you? Mary asked, feeling scared. Everyone is obliged to please me. I told you that. If I were to live, this place would sometime belong to me. They all know that. I would make them tell me. Mary saw this boy was spoiled. He thought the world belonged to him. He was strange and spoke calmly about not living. Do you think you won't live? She asked, wanting him to forget the garden. I don't suppose I shall, he answered as indifferently as he had spoken before. Ever since I remember anything, I have heard people say I shan't. At first they thought I was too little to understand, and now they think I don't hear, but I do. My doctor is my father's cousin. He is quite poor, and if I die, he will have all Misselthwaite when my father is dead. I should think he wouldn't want me to live. Do you want to live? Inquired Mary. No, he answered in a cross, tired fashion. But I don't want to die. When I feel ill, I lie here and think about it until I cry and cry. I have heard you crying 3 times, Mary said. I didn't know it was you. Were you crying about that? She wanted him to forget the garden. I dare say, he answered. Let us talk about something else. Talk about that garden. Don't you want to see it? Yes, answered Mary in quite a low voice. I do, he went on persistently. I don't think I ever really wanted to see anything before, but I want to see that garden. I want the key dug up. I want the door unlocked. I would let them take me in my chair. That would be getting fresh air. I am going to make them open the door. He became excited. His eyes shone like stars. They have to please me, he said. I will make them take me there, and I will let you go too. Mary held her hands tight. Everything would be ruined. The secret would be gone. Oh, don't do that, she cried out. He stared as if he thought she had gone crazy. Why? He exclaimed. You said you wanted to see it. I do, she answered, almost with a sob in her throat. But if you make them open the door and take you in like that, it will never be a secret again. He leaned still farther forward. A secret, he said. What do you mean? Tell me. Mary's words almost tumbled over one another. You see, she panted. If no one knows but ourselves, if there was a door hidden somewhere under the ivy, if there was, and we could find it, and if we could slip through it together and shut it behind us, and no one knew anyone was inside, and we called it our garden and pretended that we were missel thrushes, and it was our nest, and if we played there almost every day and dug and planted seeds and made it all come alive, is it dead? He interrupted her. It soon will be if no one cares for it, she went on. The bulbs will live, but the roses— He stopped her again, as excited as she was herself. What are bulbs? He put in quickly. They are daffodils and lilies and snowdrops. They are working in the earth now, pushing up pale green points because the spring is coming. Is the spring coming? He said. What is it like? You don't see it in rooms if you are ill. It is the sun shining on the rain, and the rain falling on the sunshine, and things pushing up and working under the earth, said Mary. If the garden was a secret and we could get into it, we could watch the things grow bigger every day and see how many roses are alive. Don't you see? Oh, don't you see how much nicer it would be if it was a secret? He dropped back on his pillow and lay there with an odd expression on his face. I never had a secret, except that one about not living to grow up. They don't know I know that, so it is a sort of secret, but I like this kind better. If you won't make them take you to the garden, pleaded Mary, perhaps, I feel almost sure I can find out how to get in sometime, and then, if the doctor wants you to go out in your chair, and if you can always do what you want to do, perhaps we might find some boy who would push you, and we could go alone, and it would always be a secret garden. I should like that, he said very slowly, his eyes looking dreamy. I should like that. I should not mind fresh air in a secret garden. Mary felt safer. The idea of a secret pleased him. If she kept talking about the garden, he would not want everyone to go into it. I'll tell you what I think it would be like if we could go into it, she said. It has been shut up so long, things have grown into a tangle, perhaps. He lay still and listened. Mary talked about roses and birds. She told him about the robin and Ben Weatherstaff. Colin smiled. He looked almost beautiful. I did not know birds could be like that. But if you stay in a room, you never see things. What a lot of things you know. I feel as if you had been inside that garden. Mary did not know what to say. He did not wait for an answer. I'm going to let you look at something. Do you see that rose-colored silk curtain hanging on the wall over the mantelpiece? Mary had not noticed it, but she saw it. It was a curtain of soft silk over a picture. Yes, she answered. There's a cord hanging from it, said Colin. Go and pull it. Mary got up, confused. She pulled the cord. The curtain opened. It showed a picture of a girl with a happy face and bright hair. Her eyes were gray like Colin's and looked very big. She is my mother, complained Colin. I don't see why she died. Sometimes I hate her for doing it. How queer, said Mary. If she had lived, I believe I should not have been ill always, he grumbled. I dare say I should have lived, too, and my father would not have hated to look at me. I dare say I should have had a strong back. Draw the curtain again. Mary did as she was told and returned to her footstool. She is much prettier than you, she said, but her eyes are just like yours. At least they are the same shape and color. Why is the curtain drawn over her? He moved uncomfortably. I made them do it, he said. Sometimes I don't like to see her looking at me. She smiles too much when I am ill and miserable. Besides, she is mine, and I don't want everyone to see her. There were a few moments of silence. Then Mary spoke. What would Mrs. Medlock do if she found out that I had been here? She inquired. She would do as I told her to do, he answered, and I should tell her that I wanted you to come here and talk to me every day. I am glad you came. So am I, said Mary. I will come as often as I can, but, she hesitated, I shall have to look every day for the garden door. Yes, you must, said Colin, and you can tell me about it afterward. He thought for a few minutes. Then he spoke again. I think you shall be a secret, too, he said. I will not tell them until they find out. I can always send the nurse out of the room and say that I want to be by myself. Do you know Martha? Yes, I know her very well, said Mary. She waits on me. He nodded his head toward the outer hallway. She is the one who is asleep in the other room. The nurse went away yesterday to stay all night with her sister, and she always makes Martha attend to me when she wants to go out. Martha shall tell you when to come here. Then Mary understood why Martha looked worried when Mary asked about the crying. Martha knew about you all the time? She said. Yes, she often attends to me. The nurse likes to get away from me, and then Martha comes. I have been here a long time, said Mary. Shall I go away now? Your eyes look sleepy." "I wish I could go to sleep before you leave me," he said rather shyly. "Shut your eyes," said Mary, drawing her footstool closer, "and I will do what my ayah used to do in India. I will pat your hand and stroke it and sing something quite low." "I should like that, perhaps," he said drowsily. Mary felt sorry for him. She leaned on the bed, patting his hand and singing a soft song in Hindustani. "That is nice," he said, sounding even more sleepy. She kept singing and stroking. His eyes were shut. He was fast asleep. She got up softly, took her candle, and left without a sound. The morning was misty, and rain kept falling. Mary could not go outside. Martha was very busy. In the afternoon, Mary asked Martha to come to the nursery. Martha came, bringing her knitting. "What's wrong with you?" she asked. "You look like you have something to say." "I have. I found out what the crying was," said Mary. Martha dropped her knitting. She looked at Mary with wide eyes. "You haven't!" she exclaimed. "Never!" "I heard it in the night," Mary went on, "and I got up and went to see where it came from. It was Colin. I found him." Martha's face turned red with fear. Miss Mary," she said, almost crying, "you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't. You'll get me in trouble. I never told you anything about him, but you'll get me in trouble. I shall lose my place, and what will Mother do?" "You won't lose your place," said Mary. "He was glad I came. We talked, and he said he was glad I came." "Was he?" cried Martha. "Are you sure? You don't know what he's like when anything makes him angry. He's a big boy to cry like a baby, but when he's angry, he'll scream to frighten us. He knows we can't say no to him." "He wasn't angry," said Mary. "I asked him if I should go away, and he made me stay. He asked me questions, and I sat on a big footstool and talked to him about India and about the robin and gardens. He wouldn't let me go. He let me see his mother's picture. Before I left him, I sang him to sleep." Martha gasped in surprise. "I can scarcely believe you," she protested. "It's as if you walked straight into a lion's den. If he'd been like he is most times, he'd have had a tantrum and woken the house. He won't let strangers look at him." "He let me look at him. I looked at him all the time, and he looked at me. We stared." "I don't know what to do," cried Martha. "If Mrs. Medlock finds out, she'll think I broke orders and told you, and then she will be sent back to Mother." "He is not going to tell Mrs. Medlock anything about it yet. It's to be a sort of secret just at first," Mary said firmly. "And he says everybody is obliged to do as he pleases." "Yes, that's true enough, the bad boy," sighed Martha. "He says Mrs. Medlock must, and he wants me to come and talk to him every day, and you are to tell me when he wants me." "Me?" said Martha. "I shall lose my place. I shall for sure." "You can't if you are doing what he wants you to do, and everybody is ordered to obey him," Mary argued. "Do you mean to say," cried Martha with wide open eyes, "that he was nice to you?" "I think he almost liked me," answered Mary. "Then you must have bewitched him," decided Martha, taking a deep breath. "Do you mean magic?" inquired Mary. "I've heard about magic in India, but I can't make it. I just went into his room, and I was so surprised to see him I stood and stared. And then he turned round and stared at me, and he thought I was a ghost or a dream, and I thought perhaps he was. And it was so queer being there alone together in the middle of the night and not knowing each other. And we began to ask each other questions, and when I asked him if I must go away, he said I must not." "The world is coming to an end," gasped Martha. "What's wrong with him?" asked Mary. "Nobody knows for sure," said Martha. "Mr. Craven went crazy when Colin was born. The doctors thought he'd have to go to a hospital for sick minds. It was because Mrs. Craven died, like I told you. He wouldn't look at the baby. He just yelled and said it would be another hunchback like him, and it would be better if it died." "Is Colin a hunchback?" Mary asked. He didn't look like one. He isn't yet, said Martha, but he started all wrong. Mother said there was enough trouble and anger in the house to make any child sick. They were afraid his back was weak, and they've always been taking care of it, keeping him lying down and not letting him walk. Once they made him wear a brace, but he worried so much he got very ill. Then a big doctor came to see him and made them take it off. He talked to the other doctor quite roughly. He said there had been too much medicine and too much letting him have his own way. I think he's a very spoiled boy, said Mary. He's the worst young good-for-nothing ever, said Martha. I won't say he hasn't been ill a lot. He's had coughs and colds that almost killed him 2 or 3 times. Once he had rheumatic fever, and once he had typhoid. Oh, Mrs. Medlock got a fright then. He had been unconscious, and she was talking to the nurse, thinking he didn't know anything, and she said, "He'll die this time for sure, and it's the best thing for him and for everybody." And she looked at him, and there he was, with his big eyes open, staring at her as smart as she was. She didn't know what would happen, but he just stared at her and said, "You give me some water and stop talking." "Do you think he will die?" asked Mary. "Mother says there's no reason why any child should live that gets no fresh air and does nothing but lie on his back and read picture books and take medicine. He's weak and hates the trouble of being taken outside, and he gets cold so easily he says it makes him ill." Mary sat and looked at the fire. "I wonder," she said slowly, "if it would not do him good to go out into a garden and watch things growing. It did me good." "One of the worst fits he ever had," said Martha, "was one time they took him out where the roses are by the fountain. He had been reading in a paper about people getting something he called rose cold, and he began to sneeze and said he had it. Then a new gardener who didn't know the rules passed by and looked at him strangely. He became very angry and said the gardener looked at him because he was going to be a hunchback. He cried himself into a fever and was ill all night. If he ever gets angry at me, I'll never go and see him again," said Mary. "He'll have you if he wants you. You may as well know that at the start." Soon after, a bell rang. Martha rolled up her knitting. She said, "I think the nurse wants me to stay with him for a bit. I hope he's in a good mood." She was out of the room for about 10 minutes. Then she came back looking puzzled. "Well, you have bewitched him. He's up on his sofa with his picture books. He's told the nurse to stay away until 6 o'clock. I'm to wait in the next room. The minute she was gone, he called to him and says, 'I want Mary Lennox to come and talk to me, and remember, you're not to tell anyone. You'd better go quickly.'" Mary wanted to go quickly. She wanted to see Colin very much. A bright fire was in Colin's room. Mary saw it was a beautiful room, warm and comfortable. Colin wore a soft dressing gown and sat against a big cushion. "Come in," he said. "I've been thinking about you all morning." "I've been thinking about you too," answered Mary. "You don't know how frightened Martha is. She says Mrs. Medlock will think she told me about you, and then she will be sent away." He frowned. "Go and tell her to come here," he said. "She is in the next room." Mary went and brought Martha back. Martha was shaking with fear. Colin was still frowning. "Have you to do what I please or have you not?" he demanded. "I have to do what you please, sir," Martha said, her face turning red. "Has Medlock to do what I please?" "Everybody has, sir," said Martha. "Well then, if I order you to bring Miss Mary to me, how can Medlock send you away if she finds it out?" Please don't let her, sir, pleaded Martha. I'll send her away if she dares to say a word about such a thing, said Master Craven grandly. She wouldn't like that, I can tell you. Thank you, sir, Martha said, bowing. I want to do my duty, sir. What I want is your duty, said Colin, even more grandly. I'll take care of you. Now go away. When Martha left, Mary looked at Colin as if she was thinking about him. Why do you look at me like that? He asked her. What are you thinking about? I am thinking about two things. What are they? Sit down and tell me. This is the first one, said Mary, sitting on the big stool. Once in India, I saw a boy who was a Rajah. He had rubies and emeralds and diamonds all over him. He spoke to his people just as you spoke to Martha. Everybody had to do everything he told them in a minute. I think they would have been killed if they hadn't. I shall make you tell me about Rajah soon, he said, but first tell me what the second thing was. I was thinking, Mary said, how different you are from Dickon. Who was Dickon? What a strange name. Mary wanted to tell him about Dickon. He is Martha's brother. He's 12 years old, she explained. He is not like anyone else in the world. He can charm foxes and squirrels and birds, just as people in India charm snakes. He plays a very soft tune on a pipe, and they come and listen. Colin saw some big books on a table. He pulled one toward him. There's a picture of a snake charmer in this, he exclaimed. Come and look at it. The book had beautiful colored pictures. He turned to one. Can he do that? He asked eagerly. He played on his pipe and they listened, Mary explained, but he doesn't call it magic. He says it's because he lives so much on the moor and he knows their ways. He says he feels sometimes as if he was a bird or a rabbit himself. He likes them so. I think he asked the robin questions. It seemed as if they talked to each other in soft chirps. Colin lay back on his cushion. Tell me some more about him, he said. He knows all about eggs and nests, Mary went on, and he knows where foxes and badgers and otters live. He keeps them secret so that other boys won't find their holes and frighten them. He knows about everything that grows or lives on the moor. Does he like the moor? How can he, when it's such a great, bare, sad place? It's the most beautiful place, Mary said. Thousands of lovely things grow on it, and there are thousands of little creatures, all busy building nests and making holes. They are singing or squeaking to each other. They are so busy and having such fun under the earth or in the trees or heather. It's their world. How do you know all that? Said Colin, turning to look at her. I have never been there really, Mary said, remembering. I only drove over it in the dark. I thought it was ugly. Martha told me about it first, then Dickon. When Dickon talks about it, you feel as if you saw things and heard them, and as if you were standing in the heather with the sun shining and the gorse smelling like honey and all full of bees and butterflies. You never see anything if you are ill, said Colin, moving restlessly. You can't if you stay in a room, Mary said. I couldn't go on the moor, he said, sounding unhappy. Mary was silent for a minute. Then she said something brave. You might, sometime. He moved as if he was surprised. Go on the moor? How could I? I'm going to die. How do you know? Said Mary, not sounding sorry for him. She didn't like how he talked about dying. Oh, I've heard it ever since I remember, he answered crossly. They are always whispering about it and thinking I don't notice. They wish I would, too. Mary felt quite opposite. She pressed her lips together. If they wished I would, she said, I wouldn't. Who wishes you would? The servants, and of course Dr. Craven, because he would get Misselthwaite and be rich instead of poor. He doesn't dare to say so, but he always looks cheerful when I'm worse. When I had typhoid fever, his face got quite fat. I think my father wishes it too." "I don't believe he does," said Mary stubbornly. That made Colin turn and look at her again. "Don't you?" he said. Then he lay back on his cushion and was still. There was a long silence. "I like the Grand Doctor from London because he made them take the iron thing off," said Mary at last. "Did he say you were going to die?" "No." "What did he say?" "He didn't whisper," Colin answered. "Perhaps he knew I hated whispering. I heard him say one thing quite aloud. He said, 'The lad might live if he would make up his mind to it, put him in the humor.' It sounded as if he was angry." "I'll tell you who would put you in the humor, perhaps," said Mary, thinking. "I believe Dickon would. He's always talking about living things. He never talks about dead things or things that are ill. He's always looking up in the sky to watch birds flying or looking down at the earth to see something growing. He has such round blue eyes, and they are so wide open with looking about. And he laughs such a big laugh with his wide mouth, and his cheeks are as red as cherries." She pulled her stool nearer to the sofa. "See here," she said, "don't let us talk about dying. I don't like it. Let us talk about living. Let us talk about Dickon, and then we will look at your pictures." It was the best thing Mary could have said. Talking about Dickon meant talking about the moor, his cottage, and his family. It was all so full of life. Mary talked more than she ever had. Colin talked and listened more than he ever had. They both started to laugh like happy children. They laughed so loudly that they sounded like two normal, healthy 10-year-olds, not a sad girl and a sick boy. They had so much fun that they forgot the pictures and the time. They were laughing loudly about Ben Weatherstaff and his robin. Colin was sitting up, as if he had forgotten his weak back. Then he suddenly remembered something. "Do you know there is one thing we have never once thought of?" he said. "We are cousins." It was so strange that they had talked so much and never remembered this simple thing. They laughed even more. While they were having fun, the door opened. Dr. Craven and Mrs. Medlock walked in. Dr. Craven was very surprised. Mrs. Medlock almost fell back. "Good Lord!" cried Mrs. Medlock, her eyes wide. "Good Lord!" "What is this?" said Dr. Craven, stepping forward. "What does it mean?" Colin answered as if the doctor's surprise and Mrs. Medlock's fear did not matter. He was calm. "This is my cousin, Mary Lennox," he said. "I asked her to come and talk to me. I like her. She must come and talk to me whenever I send for her." Dr. Craven looked at Mrs. Medlock. "Oh, sir," she said, breathing hard, "I don't know how it's happened. There's not a servant here who would dare to talk. They all have their orders." "Nobody told her anything," said Colin. "She heard me crying and found me herself. I am glad she came. Don't be silly, Medlock." Mary saw Dr. Craven was not happy, but he could not argue with Colin. He sat down by Colin and felt his pulse. "I am afraid there has been too much excitement. Excitement is not good for you, my boy," he said. "I should be excited if she kept away," answered Colin. His eyes began to sparkle. "I am better. She makes me better. The nurse must bring up her tea with mine. We will have tea together." Mrs. Medlock and Dr. Craven looked worried. There was nothing to do. "He does look rather better, sir," said Mrs. Medlock carefully, "but he looked better this morning before she came into the room." "She came into the room last night. She stayed with me a long time. She sang a Hindustani song to me and it made me go to sleep. I was better when I woke up. I wanted my breakfast. I want my tea now. Tell Nurse Medlock." Dr. Craven did not stay long. He talked to the nurse for a few minutes. He told Colin a few warnings, not to talk too much, not to forget he was ill, and not to forget he got tired easily. Colin looked annoyed. He kept his eyes on Dr. Craven's face. "I want to forget it," he said at last. "She makes me forget it. That is why I want her." Dr. Craven did not look happy when he left. He gave a puzzled look at the little girl. She had become quiet again. He could not see why Colin liked her, but the boy did look brighter. "They are always wanting me to eat things when I don't want to," said Colin as the nurse brought in the tea and put it on the table by the sofa. "Now, if you'll eat, I will. Those muffins look so nice and hot. Tell me about Rajah's." After a week of rain, the blue sky appeared again, and the sun was hot. Mary had not seen the secret garden or Dickon, but she enjoyed the week. She spent hours every day with Colin in his room, talking and looking at books. When he was happy, he didn't seem sick, except his face was pale and he was always on the sofa. "You are a clever one, listening and getting out of bed like you did that night," Mrs. Medlock said once. "But it has been good for us all. He has not had a tantrum since you became friends. The nurse almost left because she was so tired of him, but she says she doesn't mind staying now that you are helping her." She laughed a little. Mary was careful when she talked to Colin about the secret garden. She wanted to know if he could keep a secret. She also wondered if they could take him to the garden without anyone finding out. The doctor said Colin needed fresh air. Colin said he would like fresh air in a secret garden. Mary thought fresh air, Dickon, and seeing things grow might help Colin stop thinking about dying. Lately, Mary herself looked different, nicer since coming from India. Even Martha noticed. "The air from the moor has helped you already," Martha had said. "You're not so yellow and you're not so thin. Even your hair doesn't lie so flat. It has some life in it, so it sticks out a bit." "It's like me," said Mary. "It's growing stronger and fatter. I'm sure there's more of it." "It looks like it for sure," Martha said, gently messing up Mary's hair around her face. "You're not half so ugly when it's like that, and there's a bit of red in your cheeks." If gardens and fresh air were good for her, perhaps they would be good for Colin, but he hated people looking at him. "Why does it make you angry when you are looked at?" she asked one day. "I always hated it, even when I was very little. Then, when they took me to the seaside and I used to lie in my carriage, everybody used to stare, and ladies would stop and talk to my nurse, and then they would begin to whisper, and I knew then they were saying I shouldn't live to grow up. Then, sometimes the ladies would pat my cheeks and say, 'Poor child.' Once, when a lady did that, I screamed out loud and bit her hand. She was so frightened she ran away." "She thought you had gone mad like a dog," said Mary, not at all admiringly. "I don't care what she thought," Colin frowned. "I wonder why you didn't scream and bite me when I came into your room," said Mary. Then she began to smile slowly. "I thought you were a ghost or a dream," he said. "You can't bite a ghost or a dream, and if you scream, they don't care." "Would you hate it if a boy looked at you?" Mary asked uncertainly. He lay back on his cushion and thought. "There's one boy I believe I shouldn't mind. It's that boy who knows where the foxes live, Dickon." "I'm sure you wouldn't mind him," said Mary. "The birds don't and other animals," he said, still thinking it over. Perhaps that's why I shouldn't. He's a sort of animal charmer, and I am a boy animal." Then he laughed, and she laughed too. They both laughed a lot, finding the idea of a boy animal hiding in his hole very funny. Mary felt that she didn't need to worry about Dickon. That first morning, when the sky was blue again, Mary woke very early. The sun shone in. She jumped out of bed and opened the window. Fresh air blew in. The moor was blue and birds sang everywhere. Mary put her hand in the warm sun. She knelt, breathing deeply. "It must be very early," she said. "No one is up." A sudden thought made her stand up quickly. "I can't wait. I am going to see the garden." Mary quickly dressed. She knew a small side door she could unlock. She ran downstairs, put on her shoes, and opened the door. She stepped onto the green grass. The sun was warm and birds sang. She felt great joy and ran toward the secret garden. "It is all different already," she said. "The grass is greener and things are sticking up everywhere and things are uncurling and green buds of leaves are showing. This afternoon I am sure Dickon will come." The warm rain had made many things grow. Mary saw purple and yellow crocuses opening. 6 months ago she wouldn't have noticed, but now she saw everything waking up. When she reached the ivy-covered door, she heard a crow. It sat on the wall, a big black bird. It flew away. Mary pushed the door open. Inside, the crow landed on an apple tree. Under it was a small fox. Both watched Dickon, who was kneeling on the grass, working. Mary flew across the grass to him. "Oh, Dickon, Dickon," she cried out. "How could you get here so early? How could you? The sun has only just got up." He stood up laughing and glowing. His eyes were like a piece of the sky. He said, "I was up long before him. How could I have stayed abed? The world's all fair begun again this morning, it has, and it's working and humming and scratching and piping and nest building and breathing out sense till you've got to be out on it 'stead of lying on your back. When the sun did jump up, the moor went mad for joy, and I was in the midst of the heather, and I run like mad myself, shouting and singing, and I come straight here. I couldn't have stayed away. Why, the garden was lying here waiting." Mary put her hands on her chest, breathing hard. "Oh, Dickon, Dickon," she said, "I'm so happy I can scarcely breathe." The little fox rose from under the tree and came to Dickon. The crow flew down from its branch and settled quietly on his shoulder. "This here's the little fox cub. It's named Captain, and this here's Soot. Soot, he flew across the moor with me, and Captain, he run same as if the hounds had been after him. They both felt same as I did." Neither animal was afraid of Mary. Soot stayed on Dickon's shoulder, and Captain trotted beside him. "See here," said Dickon. "See how these has pushed up, and these, and look at these here." He knelt down, and Mary went down beside him. They had found a whole clump of crocuses, purple, orange, and gold. Mary bent her face down and kissed them again and again. "You never kiss a person in that way," she said when she lifted her head. "Flowers are so different." He looked puzzled, but smiled. He said, "I've kissed Mother many a time that way when I come in from the moor after a day's roaming, and she stood there at the door in the sun, looking so glad and comfortable." They ran around the garden, finding many wonders. They whispered. Dickon showed her rosebuds and new green shoots. They sniffed the earth, dug, and laughed until Mary's hair was messy and her cheeks red. Then a red-breasted robin flew over the wall with a twig in its beak. Dickon stood still and put his hand on Mary as if they were in a church. "We munnot stir," he whispered. "We munnot scarce breathe. I knowed he was mate huntin' when I seed him last. It's been Weatherstaff's robin. He's building his nest. He'll stay here if us don't flight him." They settled softly on the grass, not moving. "Us mustn't seem as if us was watching him too close," said Dickon. "He'd be out with us for good if he got the notion us was interfering now. He'll be a good bit different till all this is over. He's setting up housekeeping. He'll be shyer and readier to take things ill. He's got no time for visiting and gossiping. Us must keep still a bit and try to look as if us was grass and trees and bushes. Then when he's got used to seeing us, I'll chirp a bit and he'll know us'll not be in his way." Mary wasn't sure how to look like grass, trees, and bushes, but Dickens said it simply. He sat wonderfully still, and when he spoke, his voice was so soft Mary could barely hear him. "It's part of the springtime, this nest building is," he said. "I warrant it's been going on in the same way every year since the world was begun. They've got their way of thinking and doing things, and a body had better not meddle. You can lose a friend in springtime easier than any other season if you're too curious." "If we talk about him, I can't help looking at him," Mary said as softly as possible. "We must talk of something else. There is something I want to tell you." "He'll like it better if us talks of something else," said Dickon. "What is it that's got to tell me?" "Well, do you know about Colin?" she whispered. He turned his head to look at her. "What does that know about him?" he asked. "I've seen him. I have been to talk to him every day this week. He wants me to come. He says I'm making him forget about being ill and dying," answered Mary. Dickon looked relieved as soon as the surprise left his face. "I'm glad of that," he exclaimed. "I'm right down glad. It makes me easier. I knowed I must say nothing about him, and I don't like having to hide things." "Don't you like hiding the garden?" said Mary. "I'll never tell about it," I answered. "But I says to Mother, 'Mother,' I says, 'I got a secret to keep. It's not a bad one, that knows that. It's no worse than hiding where a bird's nest is. That doesn't mind it, does the?'" Mary always wanted to hear about his mother. "What did she say?" she asked, not at all afraid to hear. Dickon grinned kindly. "It was just like her, what she said," he answered. "She give my head a bit of a rub and laughed, and she says, 'Eh, lad, tha can have all the secrets that likes. I've knowed thee 12 year.'" "How did you know about Colin?" asked Mary. "Everybody as knowed about Mester Craven knowed there was a little lad as was like to be a cripple, and they knowed Mester Craven didn't like him to be talked about. Folks is sorry for Mester Craven because Mrs. Craven was such a pretty young lady and they was so fond of each other. Mrs. Medlock stops in our cottage whenever she goes to Thwaite, and she doesn't mind talking to Mother before us children because she knows us has been brought up to be trusty. How did you find out about him? Martha was in fine trouble the last time she came home. She said that heard him fretting and that was asking questions and she didn't know what to say." Mary told him her story. The wind woke her at midnight. She heard a faint, complaining voice. It led her down dark halls with her candle. She opened a door to a dimly lit room with a carved bed. When she described the small, pale face and the strange black-rimmed eyes, Dickon shook his head. "Them's just like his mother's eyes, only hers was always laughing, they say," he said. "They say as Mr. Craven can't bear to see him when he's awake, and it's because his eyes is so like his mother's, and yet look so different in his miserable bit of a face." "Do you think he wants him to die?" whispered Mary. "No, but he wishes he'd never been born. Mother, she says, that's the worst thing on earth for a child. Them as is not wanted scarce ever thrives. Mr. Craven, he'd buy anything his money could buy for the poor lad, but he'd like to forget as he's on earth. For one thing, he's afraid he'll look at him someday and find he's growed hunchback." "Colin's so afraid of it himself that he won't sit up," said Mary. "He says he's always thinking that if he should feel a lump coming, he should go crazy and scream himself to death." "Eh, he oughtn't to be lying there thinking things like that," said Dickon. "No lad could get well as thought them sort of things." The fox lay nearby. Dickon rubbed its neck, thinking. He looked around the garden. "When first we got in here," he said, "it seemed like everything was gray. Look around now and tell me if thou doesn't see a difference." Mary looked and gasped a little. "Why," she cried, "the gray wall is changing. It is as if a green mist were creeping over it. It's almost like a green gauze veil. Aye, and it'll be greener and greener till the gray's all gone. Can tha guess what I was thinking?" "I know it was something nice," said Mary eagerly. "I believe it was something about Colin. I was thinking that if he was out here, he wouldn't be watching for lumps to grow on his back. He'd be watching for buds to break on the rose bushes, and he'd likely be healthier," explained Dickon. "I was wondering if us could ever get him in the humor to come out here and lie under the trees in his carriage." "I've been wondering that myself. I've thought of it almost every time I've talked to him," said Mary. "I've wondered if he could keep a secret, and I've wondered if we could bring him here without anyone seeing us. I thought perhaps you could push his carriage. The doctor said he must have fresh air, and if he wants us to take him out, no one dare disobey him. He won't go out for other people, and perhaps they will be glad if he'll go out with us. He could order the gardeners to keep away so they wouldn't find out." Dickon was thinking hard as he scratched Captain's back. "It'd be good for him, I warrant," he said. "Us'd not be thinking he'd better never been born. Us'd be just two children watching a garden grow, and he'd be another. Two lads and a little lass just looking on to the springtime. I warrant it'd be better than doctor stuff. He's been lying in his room so long, and he's always been so afraid of his back that it has made him queer. He knows a good many things out of books, but he doesn't know anything else. He says he has been too ill to notice things and hates going out of doors and hates gardens and gardeners, but he likes to hear about this garden because it's a secret. I daren't tell him much, but he said he wanted to see it." "Us'll have him out here sometime for sure," said Dickon. "I could push his carriage well enough. Hast thou noticed how the robin and his mate has been working while we've been sitting here? Look at him perched on that branch, wondering where it'd be best to put that twig he's got in his beak." He made a soft whistle. The robin looked at him, still holding its twig. Dickon spoke to it kindly. "Wherever thou puts it," he said, "it'll be all right. Thou know how to build thy nest before thou came out of the egg. Get on with thee, lad. Thou'st got no time to lose." "Oh, I do like to hear you talk to him," Mary said, laughing delightfully. "Ben Weatherstaff scolds him and makes fun of him, and he hops about and looks as if he understood every word, and I know he likes it. Ben Weatherstaff says he is so conceited he would rather have stones thrown at him than not be noticed." Dickon laughed too and went on talking. "Thy knows us won't trouble thee," he said to the robin. "Us is near being wild things ourselves. Us is nest building too, bless thee. Look out, thou doesn't tell on us." And though the robin did not answer because its beak was busy, Mary knew that when it flew away with its twig, its bright eye meant it would not tell their secret for the world. Thank you for spending time with us. I hope this story brought you peace and reflection. We will see you soon.